everybody, and welcome to Generally Speaking, the podcast that bridges the worlds of pop culture and personal development. I'm your host, Jennifer Snook. I am so happy to be here with you today. I hope everything has been going well in your world. Here is what's been happening in mine. Well, you guys, I thought I was going to be starting with what happened, everything that went down at Thanksgiving. But I mean, today there has been big happenings here in California. We have had a major earthquake. Luckily for me and for everyone in Southern California, it wasn't here. It was up past San Francisco, between San Francisco and the Oregon border. So it's really kind of up there in Northern California. But I mean, still, it's terrifying, you guys, because I lived in the Bay when the big Loma Prieta earthquake happened, that 7.0. And I'm telling you, that is just something you never, ever forget. A 7.0 earthquake is no shit, you guys. I mean, it is serious business. So everyone that I know up there is safe. I hear that there has been very actual little damage. I mean, given how big it was, given the scope of it. So we're just crossing our fingers. Apparently the tsunami warning has been canceled. So praying that the aftershocks aren't worse than the initial big one. And because God knows sometimes they are, because everything is just already so rattled. Anyway, just a testament to the fact that we are just all here by the grace of God, and we don't know when anything big is going to strike us and take us out. So for that, let us all once again just dial down on how thankful we should be that we get to be here. And before we get into Thanksgiving and all the rest of it, if by chance you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you reach out and smash that subscribe button. We would appreciate that. So Thanksgiving, you guys, let me just tell you, I hope you guys all had the most amazing, I'm already getting choked up talking about it. It was just so great to have the girls home, to have the three of them sleeping under the same roof with me. I know I promised you guys content of me and the girls, that I was going to capture some while they were here, but to be completely honest, we were just so present and in the moment and just enjoying. I get verklempt every time I talk about my kids. So ridiculous. But we were really just so enjoying the little amount of time that we had together and just being present with whatever happened organically. The minute I pulled a camera out, quite frankly, I got barked at, so I put it away and that was it, and I didn't try to push the issue. So anyway, maybe next time. But we did go see Wicked, you guys, and I'm going to put some pictures up on my community tab so you can check it out. But Wicked, I mean, can we just talk about it for a second? I mean, have you seen it? Did you go? Were you impressed? I mean, I have to tell you, I already did tell you guys this once, that I knew that Ariana was going to bring it. I knew that Cynthia was going to bring it. And I knew Ari was going to bring it because I have seen her on stage actually perform a bunch of numbers from Wicked years ago, before we moved to LA, actually. Actually, part of the reason that we moved to LA was because of this event where I saw Ari. My middle daughter, Taylor, was in this huge talent competition in Florida. In 2000, it was either the end of 11 or the beginning of 12, but she was in this huge competition, this huge talent competition, and Ariana Grande was the big star who was not only performing the closing night, but handing out the grand prize award. So you guys, there is the third place award, the second place award, the first place award, and I'm just sitting in the audience, right, knowing that, gosh, I mean, there's like thousands of kids in this competition, like, and they gave away like all of the awards. And I'm just sitting there like rehearsing the pep talk I'm going to give my daughter about how she did her best. And that's all you can hope for. And you guys, all of a sudden, I didn't even know it. There was a grand prize that I didn't know about. And the grand prize went to whatever the number was, Taylor Snook. My daughter, you guys, won the grand prize, which was a $10,000 check. And then you had all of this access to all of these agents and stuff, right? And it was Ariana Grande that gave Taylor that check. But before the awards were this amazing performance by Ariana, and she did a ton of Wicked numbers. And I had a week, you guys. I'm telling you, it was such a stressful week. I mean, rehearsing, performing, a lot. I can tell you, intense. And so I was sitting in the back of that theater, just thoroughly enjoying this performance, thinking this hands down the best part of my week. It was so good. And I remember looking at Ariana thinking she was made to play that role. And every time her name would come up, I would have just nothing but incredible things to say about this performance I saw. So it's funny, last time I talked about this with you guys, I'd actually forgotten to mention that. But so, yeah, so I had actually seen her in person perform a bunch of these numbers, but seeing what they did with that movie, you guys, it was so magical. And okay, I'm going to try to talk about Wicked and not cry about this. But I turned to my girls and the looks on their faces through so many of these numbers, it was like their face when they were 5 years old watching the parade at Disneyland. You know what I mean? It was just sheer magic. And the fact that I have been loving that show since it came out, and just it has been such a part of our lives. I mean, my Mike, I fully indoctrinated him into Wicked too. After we'd been dating like a year, he got Defy Gravity tattooed on the bottom of his foot. So, I mean, it's a thing for us. And so to be there all together enjoying it was just so, so special, and such a beautiful way to wrap up the whole holiday weekend. We just had the best time. We had the best food. My tailor made homemade biscuits, and I bought store-bought biscuits, you guys, just in case they didn't turn out. But I'm telling you, and I think she got the recipe off of TikTok, and I'm telling you, it was amazing. Her biscuits were fully the hit of the entire Thanksgiving meal. Also, big news, I am a grandmother now. I have a grand dog who I met over Thanksgiving. My tailor brought him. She'd had him for like 2 weeks, and I hadn't met him yet because he hadn't had all the shots. Anyway, he is adorable. His name is Hamburger. I'm going to put some pics up of him too. He is so cute, you guys, and he got along so well with my Albie. The two of them played like just the oldest pals, and it was so, so much fun. Okay, now we're moving over into the Bravo of it all, everybody. It seems like that big shakeup over at Vanderpump Rules really has Teresa stressed about what to do next. Teresa is twisting in the wind about it, you guys, and throwing anything at the wall that she hopes is going to bring in a buck. And truthfully, at this point, I almost feel sorry for her. I really do. And you know they're not doing well because, I mean, did you see, if by chance you guys are going to be in the Bahamas this weekend, here's what you need to know. You can watch Joe Giudice fight in a ring. I don't know if it's like, if they're throwing real punches or if this is just an exhibition, but anyway, you can see Joe Giudice go at it with Jennifer Lopez's first husband, Ohani Noah. If you're in the Bahamas this weekend, Teresa's promoting it on her story. We will see. Also, I'm not recapping New York on this pod, you guys, but we do need to take a minute to talk about that very special sighting we saw the other night at Raquel's engagement party. Did you see what she was wearing? Did you see it? The infamous heart that we saw Bronwyn make her big debut in, the big red heart that some people thought was couture, some people thought was a costume. Raquel wore that to her pose party, her pose engagement party. And now I just kind of want to know, I mean, did she borrow it from Bronwyn? Did Rihanna lend it to her? Was it a knockoff? Like, I thought there were only 3 of them. Was there really 4? I need to know. I need all the deets on that heart. Over in Atlanta, Kim says that Croy actually pushed her to the ground amidst their marital drama. Kim is currently trying to sell fake Christmas trees that she used around her house for some extra Christmas cash. Meanwhile, though, this is some good news. Croy is actually making some hard-earned money working for a crane company. And good luck to him. I hope he really can get his feet off the ground after this whole nightmare with her. Heather Gay has dropped her second book, you guys. It's called Good Time Girl. And in it, she says that Monica Garcia told her that Jen Shah's husband, Coach, you know, Coach, that Coach tried to kiss her, everybody. But the question is it really true? I mean, can we trust Heather? And I just don't know if we can. I mean, between that whole debacle with the eye that she drug out forever and ever, And then the whole birthday situation. Remember a couple of weeks ago when Bronwyn said that she bought her that ticket and she said, "How would you know when my birthday is? I've lied to everyone." I just don't, and her proclaiming that she's some big liar now really makes me wonder, when are we supposed to believe her? I mean, it's ridiculous. Um, and honestly, I still wish Monica Garcia was here. I think Bronwyn and Monica Garcia would have been amazing. But I mean, imagine Heather. I mean, she was so threatened by Monica. She's so threatened by Bronwyn. It's a shame. There's space for everyone, Heather. That's what you need to learn. As soon as you learn that, everything will get a lot smoother. A lot less dramatic, but a lot smoother. Speaking of dramatic, Brandy is really desperate for some bucks. She is putting up clickbait, you guys. I mean, the same kind of clickbait that Teresa put out about Joe. Remember when she said, "Pray for Joe"? Brandy's putting out "Pray for Kim Richards." And I mean, it's sad. It is so sad that she's at this point. I honestly, there's another one I feel sorry for, Brandy. But I feel with Brandy like it's time that she needs to just enter a new arena. She needs to, like, I don't know, do something completely different in her life and just stop ruminating on everything that's happened to her in this and just make a clean break and start fresh, poor thing. Speaking of desperate, it's time to talk about John Jansen, because my God, is this guy desperado or what? I mean, did you watch that pathetic interview where he walked around with that guy from ET? And then on Thanksgiving, we get that big post from Alexis with the spreadsheet and everything. And can someone please tell me how we even know that those numbers are legit? I'm sure Shannon could come up with a litany of numbers and say that they were this or that. It is just in such poor taste. And he sits there and he talks. Everything that he is doing proves what Shannon said about him, that he is just so concerned about the public's perception of him. And you know what? Clearly, he is a bit of a poser, right? Because are you just so desperate to look like you're living the life that you live in a place that's so small that your kids can't come and stay, that you can't create a life with someone? I mean, the shit he said on that interview was just so ridiculous. Why in God's name, if all of those things that he says about himself are true, and if he really believes that, then why does he care what everybody else believes? And quite frankly, I don't care what he says about Shannon disparaging him over the years. The only thing Shannon did over the years was defend him over and over and over again. The guy's a poser. He is just a poser, period. Okay, now we're going to broach a subject that I know everyone is talking about right now, and it's about whether or not Teddi Mellencamp should have to address her affair on her podcast, if she should have to get into it. Right? Because, people have an argument that Teddi talks about everybody else's affairs, that she's constantly reporting. I mean, she didn't really report on Kyle's, right? I mean, she didn't report on Kyle's. She's not wanting to report on her own. But I mean, the fact of the matter is she's not a journalist, right? She's not held to a certain standard. Teddi can basically do what the hell she wants. If she wants to talk about it and she's moved to do so, then she can talk about it. And I think everybody can come down really hard on Teddi and, whatever. But I also think everybody needs to remember that Teddi has been dealt a really rough hand with all of the stuff that she's dealt with in the last few years, with this constant looming cancer that is just, she can't seem to escape from. Every couple months, she has a cancer scare. And I think that constant fear can really shift someone into a different mindset, and maybe they can't fully explain or don't feel like they need to explain why they're doing the things they're doing. And I think in this instance, it's one of those things that you really kind of have to be in her shoes before you can pass judgment. So I'm not passing judgment on Teddi. She can talk about it. She cannot talk about it. I just hope that she is in a good place emotionally and spiritually. And I hope that her fear doesn't keep getting the best of her. And I really only hope for her health and happiness, because I think Teddi has a really good heart. I think Teddi means well. I think she does. She might be a little awkward and not to your taste, but I think Teddi has a good heart. In other news, it seems Katie Maloney and Ariana Madix are going to court. Headed to court against Chef Penny, you guys. That thing is still happening. And apparently a Superior Court judge has set a trial date for March 16th, 2026, which seems like plenty of time for them to come to some type of a deal. And honestly, I think if the girls were smart, they would settle with her as soon as possible. I mean, but Penny is wanting to move forward and says that she owns 10% of the business, not just the sandwich shop, you guys, the business. And because she owns the trademark, like, I don't know how they're gonna, and I mean, the trademark is basically the business. So I don't know how they're gonna get out of that legally. I think she has a really strong leg to stand on. Um, so I don't know. The last thing they want to do is spend all of their money on legal fees and end up losing in the end, right? So they should just cut her a check and like end this sooner rather than later, just for their own bank account. Because I mean, Vanderpump Rules is over, and as much as Ariana has been enjoying success, that success can dry up so quickly. I don't know how, in God's name. I hope Katie Maloney has socked a whole bunch of money away, because I don't know how she's ever gonna keep the same type of standard of lifestyle that she's had with that paycheck. I mean, those paychecks are hefty, you guys. Those Bravo paychecks are hefty. But when you get hefty paychecks, so, 99% of the population, the more money you make, the more money you spend. And so, we all think that they should have so much money, but they've been, they've gotten accustomed to living that lifestyle, and that lifestyle costs a certain amount of money. But then when, the paycheck dries up that supplies that lifestyle, it really vanishes quickly. I mean, it happens fast. And I really hope they've all saved for a rainy day. I really do. Okay, everybody, now it is time for a reality check, and we are heading over to Beverly Hills, where life is a beach, everybody. And this week, Kathy Hilton planned an oceanside getaway in Oceanside, which is actually a couple of hours away it's between here and San Diego, just north of San Diego, actually, where my bestie lives. But this episode should have been titled Kathy Core, because it was so Kathy Core. The show starts out with Kathy Hilton and her brand ambassador, I think, was that what they called her? A brand ambassador assistant. Anyway, another woman in pink, driving around town in a vintage convertible Rolls Royce, wearing straw bucket hats, delivering suitcases to all the ladies full of stuff that they are going to take to the beach, right? She drops the first one off over at Bose's house. And honestly, that Bose, is she not just the most beautiful, amazing, I mean, brilliant, funny, down to earth? I'm fully in love with Bose, period. That's my new favorite. Then we head over to the studio where Garcelle is there with her son, who is taking pics because he just got signed with LA Models. And can I just tell you, I mean, did he not look like just he was born to model? She was absolutely right. She said, he looks like he was born to do this. And I mean, my God, this is, I think, his first time, like, in front of the camera, like, doing his thing. Kid looked like an absolute vet. I mean, he looked better than some of the people that are, the most famous faces that are walking the runways. And he has such an interesting, gorgeous, striking face. I mean, that kid has found his sweet spot, even if it's only temporary to put him through college or to create a hefty savings account for him. Whatever it is, that modeling for him is where it's at. His brother's really adorable too. I mean, they both could do it. Then Kathy and her assistant go to do the drop off over at Dorit's house before they head over to Kyle's house. And once they get to Kyle's so hilarious with her sister. It is so funny to watch the two of them together. Kyle goes on to tell Kathy that these hats that she's so proud of actually look like lampshades. While Kathy's there, Kyle tells her that she's redecorating in an attempt to give herself some kind of a fresh start, even though she's still in the same house. I mean, if she's staying in the house, it only seems right that she'd give it a bit of a facelift. Then Mauricio heads over to Kyle's, where she shows him all the changes that she's making. The two of them sit down, and Kyle once again marvels at Mauricio's ability to detach. I mean, do you see, Mauricio is one of those guys where, everything, he's like Kathy, everything is just hunky-dory. He lives right there on the surface because, you know, it's convenient that way. And I feel like he doesn't have to really visit. He's not one of those guys that really likes to visit his feelings. He just likes to, you know, everything's fine. We're great over here. And you can tell that that exact attitude that Mauricio has is part of what caused Kyle to detach, because there's not any real connection. It's just, it's fake. Kyle goes on to tell us that Mauricio signed a 6-month lease at his new apartment, but that he actually bought the furniture, which confused her because the 6 months seemed temporary, but the furniture purchased not so temporary. Then the producer asked Kyle if there's any part of her that hopes that her and Mo would get back together. And Kyle pauses, and you can just see this whole conversation happen in her head. And then she goes, I don't want to answer that question right now. And then Kyle and Mauricio go on to debate whether or not he has enough towels in his apartment. As everyone's packing for Oceanside, Dorit and Erica have a FaceTime and talk about the Kyle of it all. Poor Erica is really trying to play peacekeeper, but Dorit and Kyle both have like laundry lists of the things that the other person has done to hurt them. Erica tells Dorit that the two of them need to have a sit down, just the two of them. Then all the women head to Kathy's house to kick off the trip. There's champagne, there's strawberries, there's a beautiful little breakfast buffet, and a whole lot of tension between Kyle and Dorit. But thank God for Jennifer Tilly, who comes in and breaks up all the bullshit. And I gotta say, you guys, I am so here for the Jennifer Tilly of it all. I am so here for the Jennifer Tilly of it all. I'm telling you, her and Bose have been the most perfect addition. That this is exactly how you add people to a show. This is exactly it. You have your core people still there, the core people that make sense still there. And then you bring in two incredibly dynamic, strong people that can stand in, you know what I mean? They are like stand in their own strength. They know who they are. They're not going to get taken over to one side or the other. I mean, these two are, I love this cast. This to me is Beverly Hills. When Kathy Hilton was cruising with the top down, eating that banana with her freaking bucket hat on and her granny pillows behind her with the banana, I just thought this is everything. This is exactly what housewives should be. There's plenty of drama. Look, I mean, there's people pissed off all over the place. But there's this perfect levity. Beverly Hills is the perfect balance right now. And Dorit might not feel that way because she probably doesn't feel like things are balanced, and Kyle might not feel like things are balanced. But as a viewer, I really feel like this is like the perfect show. I watched it once just to enjoy it, and then I watched a second time to take notes like I normally did. But it was so good. I feel like I'm going to go back and watch it a third time just so I can really just take in what I missed. And quite frankly, just to watch Kathy all over again, she's getting me this season. I feel like Kathy really had a bit of growth as a sister and as a human, going through that stuff with her daughter and going through like the Kyle stuff that all happened last season. I feel like she's really trying to be more present and show up, you know, as like a full-fledged human being more this season. Anyway, I'm big fan, big fan. Then the ladies all get in the bus and start heading down to Oceanside. And to keep the conversation flowing, Erica asked the group, who is the biggest star that they ever went on a date with? And Garcelle right away pipes up, and she's got some good ones. And she says, Eddie Murphy, Will Smith, Sean Penn. And then Erica goes, good Lord, after names like that, can someone please explain to me why she married the man that she married? Then Garcelle says, if you've slept with a guy who is now gay, take a sip. And about half of them do. And then Tilly says, if you've slept with a man who has a crooked dick, take a sip. And half of them do. And once again, we're at the level. We're at the perfect level. Then the ladies arrive in Oceanside and pull up to the hotel that was right next to the Top Gun house, where there was a Tom Cruise lookalike waiting for the ladies. Hilarious. The girls all get settled into their rooms, and then they head back down to the beach, where Kathy had just the most beautiful setup on the sand for everybody. I mean, tables, chairs, loungers. I mean, it was a vibe. Then Kathy points out a whale in the water, and Kyle very quickly tells her that that whale actually happens to be just a surfer. The women are all at the table eating and drinking and chatting, but Dorit and Bose are at the end of the table getting into a very serious conversation that the rest of the women feel excluded from. Dorit tells Bose that PK has gotten himself a new apartment without consulting her, and she is feeling totally out of the loop. And then it's game time. And when I say game time, I'm talking relay races and duck, duck, goose, you guys, because this is Kathy Hilton's party, remember? Then in confessional, Jen Tilly tells us that she can relate to how hard divorce is because she was married to one of the guys who created The Simpsons. She says they were married and got divorced and that it was a really difficult process, but she did get a part of The Simpsons, so she has a huge mattress of money to rest her worried head on. Then the ladies wrap up game time. They go upstairs and they start getting ready for dinner. And Dorit is just so intense, you guys. When she's getting ready for dinner, I mean, like, Dorit is just on a 10. So it's like she's so upset with Kyle, but I think she's so upset with the state of her marriage. And she is just at a 10 all the time. I mean, she's dressed and she went like ballistic. She put on a hoop earring and she's looking at Erica just going, look at this. Look at this. It's terrible. I mean, we're talking an earring, you guys. And then she wants the other earring, this other beautiful earring, because this will make her feel beautiful. Look at this earring. Personally, I like the hoop better, but that's just me. And then the ladies all head down to dinner. Kyle toasts her sister. And then once the toast was done, she says, can I say something? And Kathy says, of course you can. And then Kyle addresses Dorit and says, I don't know when you and I are going to speak, but I would like to have a conversation because I don't want there to be awkwardness. And then at that point, you guys, it is on. And Dorit says, obviously, we just scratched the surface and just got started. I think it's really important that we address the elephant in the room. And Kathy, with her impeccable timing, goes, there's an elephant in the room? And then Sutton to camera says, when elephants get angry, they're very dangerous animals. And I don't want to watch two elephants fight tonight. And then it's really on because then Dorit goes, listen, everybody knows that at Sutton's party, we got into it and that you walked away. And I'm telling you, Dorit is like a dog with a bone. She is pissed about a lot of things and taking it out on Kyle. She brings up what happened on the BravoCon stage and says that even Erica agrees with her. But Kyle says, listen, Dorit, that was just one of many things. Kyle brings up the shade that was thrown at Teddy and how Dorit didn't defend her. Kyle says, that's just one of many things. The final straw was when you showed my text on camera, but Dorit stands firm to the fact that she felt manipulated by that text and clarifies that she has never disclosed anything personal that Kyle has asked her to keep quiet and says that she never would. Kyle says, I never said that you disclosed anything private about me. And Dorit says, well, you could fool me after the fact that you're going around on every show and podcast and radio show and painting me as a person that would do that. You went on to say that you were terribly hurt and that it was a punch in your gut and that you cried and cried. And honestly, it is kind of curious because in one breath, Kyle is sitting there saying that they were never really that close. But she's going on all of these shows talking about how she was so devastated by what Dorit said, the things that Dorit did. But doesn't that make you wonder, like, wouldn't you only be that devastated and so hurt about what someone did if they were a good friend of yours and if you did have a close relationship? Otherwise, why would you care if just a casual friend was saying those things? It wouldn't cut you to your core like Kyle said it did. Just doesn't make sense. Then Kyle reminds Dorit that God gave her 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and that maybe she should actually try listening to her. And Dorit says, it's okay, Kyle. It's time for you to fucking listen. And I'm telling you, there is just no slowing Dorit at this point. Poor Dorit, she is really going through it. This is a tough time for her. I don't even think this is a Dorit was right and a Kyle was wrong, or a Kyle was right and Dorit was wrong. These are just 2 friends that are going through really rough times in their lives. So we will see. Moving over to Salt Lake City, you guys. The episode opens with Meredith preparing for her big bat mitzvah with her entire family showing up. So sweet. Her mom, her sister, the son that we never see. Heather arrives and decides that this actually is an event worthy of her hopping back on the espresso martini train for. She's had 2 of them by the time that Whitney and her husband show up. Whitney gives Bronwyn a bit of the cold shoulder, and when Angie gets there, she does the same to her. But Bronwyn doesn't care, you guys. She's personally waiting on an apology from both of them. Everyone's wondering if Mary's coming, and then they cut back to a scene earlier in the week between her and Angie in Mary's kitchen, talking about just the state of affairs that Mary's finding herself in, dealing with her son, who has very clearly been struggling. Then we hear Brittany say, "I'm still upset with Angie for calling me a slut and saying that I'm screwing 3 guys, especially when she knows how sensitive that is to my religion." And I would just like to say, bitch, if it's so sensitive to your religion, then maybe you shouldn't do it. Just don't do it. You don't do something and then be pissed at somebody else for talking about it because they're not being sensitive to your religion. If it's your religion, then you're the one that needs to be sensitive to it and follow those rules and not do it. I mean, that chick she's too much for me. Then it's time to start the ceremony, and everybody is emotional. Lisa's crying, Seth is crying, I'm crying. I don't even know what's happening and I'm crying, but I can tell it's a moment, and I love a moment. And then in the middle of this moment, you guys, all of a sudden we see Mary Cosby show up. And not only does she show up, but she's lurking around, poking into the windows. So, I mean, it's so hilarious. This very solemn, serious, thing is taking place. And you see this woman looking through the window. She is hilarious. Once the ceremony wraps up, we end up meeting Heather's plastic surgeon, which, hi. And Angie tells Lisa that she needs to talk to Bronwyn. Then Mary approaches Meredith and tells her that she's proud of her, but that they need to talk. And then she goes on to say that none of her true friends have ever walked out on her the way that she did. Mary says, "I know this is your night and I don't want to fight with you." And then they both have this weird kind of quasi apology that they give each other and just kind of sweep it under the rug. Then Angie approaches Bronwyn and asks for a minute of her time. Bronwyn says, "To talk, yes. To argue, no." So they step away and Angie says, "Well, I always like to start out with a compliment. I love your dress, love your purse, great sparkles." And Bronwyn goes, "Well, is part 2 of this going to be an apology?" And Angie says, "Do I owe you an apology?" And Bronwyn goes, "Yes." And Angie says, "That's funny because I feel like you owe me one." Angie says, "Things got heated. It ended badly. You twisted what I said." And Bronwyn says, "Did I twist the 6,000 times that you told me to shut the fuck up?" And Angie says, "No, I said it." And Bronwyn says, "You and I both know that you telling me to shut the fuck up that many times is out of line. And quite frankly, until I get an apology from you about it, I have nothing to say. Do whatever you want, Ange, but not with me." And then Angie, like the mean, mindless drone she is, says, "Well, does it make you feel better if I say I'm sorry that I told you to shut the fuck up?" And then at that point, Bronwyn is just done. Angie is doing this weird thing and trying to go head to head with Bronwyn, but honestly failing miserably at it. Things start getting heated, people are noticing, and then Todd approaches and he tries to get in between the girls. He says, "I think it's time for a break. Would you girls like another drink?" And he turns to Angie and says, "Can I get you a drink?" And Bronwyn at this point is just grossed out and tells him to his face, "You don't need to bring a drink to someone who's calling me a liar." And then she turns and she goes back in on Angie and says, "If you want to give another bullshit apology, go for it. But I haven't heard anything come out of you that was worthwhile." And at this point, everybody is tripping out. Bronwyn bolts to the bar, and Maylee, is that her name? Maylee's standing there and asks her if she's okay. And then Todd comes over to do damage control, basically, but he only makes things worse. Then while Heather and Whitney are talking, Lisa approaches. Her and Lisa start spatting, and Whitney says that Bronwyn is taking her words and twisting them. So in an effort to get the truth out there, they call Bronwyn over, and then Angie steps back in the conversation. She says, "Bronwyn thinks I'm a bad person." And then Brittany pipes up and says, "Well, I think you say things just to be dramatic." And Angie says, "Brittany, I've been so nice to you." And Brittany says, "You called me a slut. You said I did 10 guys." And as Angie is pounding her hand on the table saying that that is not true, Bronwyn turns up the heat a little more and says, "I'll be messy and tell you that outside, Brittany says she thinks that you called her a slut because you're one. And Bronwyn at this point is making no apologies. She says she's tired of Brittany's constant victim routine, and so she's just going to call her out. She doesn't care at this point. Bronwyn, like the rest of us, are tired of Brittany's whole victim routine. But Brittany is fully in shock that Bronwyn burned her off. But Bronwyn holds her feet to the fire and says, no, you did say that. You said that outside. And so Brittany is forced to say, well, what I said was, and then she goes on to repeat exactly what Bronwyn said and proves that Bronwyn wasn't lying, that she did indeed say that. And then Angie goes, oh, well, listen, you called me a slut? You called me a slut? I don't look like I have a high body count. I don't dress like I have a high body count. And I don't wear my hair like I have a high body count. And Brittany goes, do you think my hair looks cheap? And Angie says, I think it looks a little hookerish. I think it looks like high body count hair. High body count hair, you guys. I mean, come on, high body count hair. I mean, that was hilarious and organic. I love it. High body count hair. I'm going to use that. I'm totally going to use that. She goes on to say, that's high body count hair, and that's a high body count dress. Those are high body count heels. And then she stands back and goes, do I look slutty? And then she says, you know what, Brittany, just take your little bump and walk away. And at this point, we've all seen Angie do this a few times now, where it's like, if she gets confronted, like she really tries to play the part, but as soon as she gets confronted, I mean, the gloves come off and the claws come out and it gets bad fast. Brittany is clearly very rattled, and she runs over to a table where Whitney and whatever that girl's name is, Maylee, she tells them about what unhinged Angie just said about her looking slutty. And so they look over in Angie's direction, and Angie is just sitting there staring them back down. And she says, it's a bump it. And yours is a little bit too, to Maylee, because she has a little bump in her hair too. I'm telling you, she was just going after anyone in her path. And she's still raging on and on about how she's not a slut. She's never been a slut, not even in high school. And I mean, honestly, I'm just going to say this. It is very clear that she is very troubled inside, because nobody behaves that way unless they have some real pain that they are dealing with. We've seen that she has a lot of childhood issues that she's still carrying around, and pain that she's still carrying around about growing up without a mom, and that, you know, everything that she went through because of her mother's addiction issues. And she has a lot of stuff that she needs to work through and heal. And you can tell that all of that stuff is just bottled up. And so when something happens, that's why the gloves just come off and she attacks the way she does. This is a perfect example of how I always say, until you heal the wound will continue to win. That is her wound winning. Nobody is that triggered unless the wounds are open and fresh, right? She and her wounds are still very open and still very fresh. It's almost like she knows what she's doing is wrong, but she can't help it, because as soon as someone says to her, well, she's crying, it's like she totally switched into a completely different person. And she goes, oh, she is? And then suddenly she cares. I mean, it all just feels so performative to me. Brittany is, of course, very upset. She heads for the door, but Meredith stops her and asks her what happened. Brittany tells her what Angie said. And at the same time, Lisa joins them and she says, listen, relax. Angie knows that she owes you an apology. And then Angie comes over, and as soon as she opens her mouth, Meredith says, you call everyone a slut and a whore, and I'm not sure why you're here. Angie says, you invited me, Meredith. And Meredith says, well, you can leave. Get your husband and go. Bye. And then Meredith screams, security, security, and tells her two big bouncers that she wants her out. And at this point, Angie can't even believe what is happening. Meredith says that she is done with Angie's slut shaming. And then security brings Angie her coat, but Angie grabs the coat. She says, this is Brittany's coat, and throws it on the floor. And as Angie's walking out, Lisa and Whitney go over to her. Angie says, I'm done, and I'm embarrassed that she invited me here. And this very holy event, you guys, took a very unholy turn. I mean, it got down and dirty, and this is very clearly not the way the day was meant to end. Then we cut to Lisa in confessional, and she's going over this list of who hates who and how she can't wait to host them all together in Puerto Vallarta. And now I'm just wondering if they're going to take a page out of Vicki Gunvalson's book and go whoop it up together at Andale's. What do you think? Do you think they're going to go to Andale's? That's what I want to know. Comment below and let me know if you think they're going to go to Andale's. We're going to see. We'll see if we can predict this. Okay, guys, that about does it for the pop culture portion of the pod. But I wanted to talk a little personal development with you, and I thought that we could tie in the whole Mary Cosby, the whole Robert Jr. situation, because I know that there are a lot of people out there talking about whether it was right for Bravo to, you know, show the scenes that they showed with Robert and Mary, having the discussions that they had. And I know that Jill Zarin's daughter chimed in and made a comment because she's another Bravo kid, but being a Bravo kid doesn't qualify you to talk about a situation that's this heavy and this intense and this deep. And I personally think that it was amazing to show that scene. And I think that it very well may have helped some people. For those of you who don't know, I can really relate to Robert Jr.'s situation because I too had a pain pill addiction for a period of years in my life, and it nearly destroyed me. And I firmly believe that that what happened that day was a cry for help. I don't believe that Robert was forced to do anything. I think it was, you know, so the universe works in strange ways, but him opening up to his mom that way felt very organic to me. I don't think Mary had a clue about the depth of what was going on with her son. So while I'm sure it was shocking and jarring to find that out on camera, at least she found out, and at least he got that out, right? And I know for a fact that there are people sitting at home watching that who have kids in that situation, who there are adults, parents who are dealing with the same situation and could see that. And you know, that is so much of the problem with addiction is the admitting that you have a problem, because there is just such shame around it. And no one wants to have to tell people that they love that they weren't strong enough, that they fell prey to you know, the seduction of those pills, and really any way that you can get it out and get that out there, because once it's out there, you can deal with it, right? Once it's out there, and then you move forward and you start making progress. But as long as you're in denial, there is no progress. There is just back up, back up, back up. And that's when things go really south and really sour. And on that note, I would just like to once again reiterate the fact that it is never too late to turn it all around. There is a path forward. Healing happens. I promise you that you can come out of it on the other side even better and stronger than you were before. I promise you, I am a walking testimony. Anyway, you guys, that about does it for this episode of Generally Speaking. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you've been watching this on YouTube, please make sure you reach out and smash that subscribe button. If you've been listening on your favorite streaming platform, please make sure you give us a follow, give us a 5-star rating, leave a message, share us with your family, share us with your friends. We would love that. If you'd like to reach me on socials, you can find me on TikTok at This Is Generally Speaking, or on Instagram at The Jennifer Snook. If you'd like to get your hands on some of this adorable Generally Speaking merch, I will leave the link down below. And if you'd like to collaborate or have a question you'd like answered on the pod, you can reach me by email at jennifer@jennifersnook.com. Okay, that does it for today. I hope you have a wonderful week. And until we are together again, everybody, stay rooted in love. See you next time.